Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
The ordinance has been conducted for first reading. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much, Mayor and members
Thank
of the
you.
council.
Thank you for the work. Next public hearing is a quasi-judicial action, and it's an appeal of a planning commission decision on a conditional use permit for commercial cannabis. Why don't we, before we open the public hearing, the city manager has a statement.
Thank you, Mayor. With respect to item 15, my husband had prior involvement with Sweet Flower. That is the applicant in the hearing you're about to proceed into. The lawyers have reviewed the facts, and based on legal advice received, it's been determined that I do not have a conflict of interest related to this matter. However, to avoid any appearance of a conflict related to Sweet Flower, I am abstaining from involvement regarding this matter, and Assistant City Manager Nick Rodriguez will represent the city manager's office in the matter. Thank you.
Thank you. And now we can open the public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This is the time and place for the public hearing on a quasi-judicial action appeal planning commission decision on conditional use permit 6921 for the approval of the commercial cannabis retailer at 827 East Colorado Boulevard, submitted by Integral Associates Dina LLC and Harvest of Pasadena LLC. Sorry. No publishing was required for this public hearing. However, the public hearing notice was mailed and posted on February 28th, 2022. The city clerk's office received one letter in opposition to the approval of the conditional use permit application until an environmental review of potential cumulative impacts is conducted, and one, quote, declaration expressing concerns with traffic flow issues likely to be caused by approving the staff recommendation. Those two letters were distributed to the council, posted online as part of the record for this item. Mayor and City Council, just to go over the process for this public hearing with the applicant and appellant, we will first hear from staff, the staff presentation. Then the City Council can ask questions of staff. Then the applicant will have a 7 to 10 minute presentation followed by City Council questions. Then the appellant will have a 7 to 10 minute presentation followed by City Council questions. Then if there's any public comment from members of the public, and then followed by a rebuttal by the appellant and then the applicant, each up to no more than 3 minutes, and then close the public hearing, and the council can then do their deliberations. So just wanted to lay that out as we move forward.
Thank you. So why don't we go ahead and get started?
Mayor, thank you very much. Just very briefly, this is just a conditional use permit that was approved unanimously by the Planning Commission. There was an appeal filed. I'll remind the City Council that the number of retail establishments has been set by both the voters and the council and capped at 6. So there are a maximum of 6 in terms of cumulative impacts. What we're talking about really are a max of 6 in the city. And the location of each one of these has been also set by ordinance in terms of the zones that they can be located in and their distance separation requirements from other potentially sensitive uses. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to Guille Nunez, our project manager.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor and council persons. The item before you tonight is the appeal of Planning Commission decision of a conditional use permit number 6921 for approval of a commercial cannabis retailer at 827 East Colorado Boulevard. This conditional use permit is a request for approval of a 1,414 square foot retail cannabis dispensary within an existing 3,200 square foot building. Interior tenant improvements and minor exterior alterations are proposed. No new square footage is proposed. This conditional use permit was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission on January 12, 2022, at a notice public hearing. And this here is an elevation of the proposed facade for Sweet Flowers dispensary. Oh, okay, sorry. I do. I was trying to figure out, I'm sorry. Sure. An appeal of Planning Commission approval of conditional use permit 6921 was submitted on January 24th, 2022. Appellants of this, the appellants are two of the existing cannabis operators currently operating in the city, and they are Integral Associates Dina LLC and Harvest of Pasadena LLC. Integral Associates Dina LLC is currently operating as Essence at 908 East Colorado Boulevard. Harvest of Pasadena is currently operating at 169 West Colorado Boulevard. The appellant cite 5 reasons for their appeal addressing CEQA and CUP findings. So their second statement in their appeal is that the Planning Commission erred in the CEQA determination for the conditional use permit. The 2 exemptions that were approved by the Planning Commission for conditional use permit 6921 were Class 1 for existing structures and Class 3 for conversion of small structures. The property does exist of an existing facility, and it does qualify for both Class 1 and Class 3 categorical exemptions. The appellants state that these exemptions do not apply because cannabis retail sales is not an existing use and thus should only apply to a project that involves negligible or no expansion of an existing use. Citing various Supreme Court decisions, the appellants state that allowing up to 3 dispensaries in a council district and in closer proximity to one another than 1,000 feet inevitably creates significant environmental impacts, including increased traffic from customers driving to new dispensaries, increased noise, and changed patterns of urban development in the city. However, the property does consist of an existing facility, which is a single-story commercial building, which was constructed in 1923 and which has been used for various commercial uses, including retail sales, restaurants, and service uses. There are no expansions proposed because the property is an existing facility, with only negligible improvements proposed, and it has previously been used for various retail uses in the past. Therefore, it qualifies for both the Class 1 and Class 3 categorical exemptions. Statement 3 of the appeal is that findings 4 and 5 cannot be made because no environmental review of likely impact of likely traffic, noise, or other environmental impacts was conducted. The Planning Commission found that all of the required conditional use findings can be made. A full analysis of the findings is in Attachment A to the staff report. The project does qualify for both Class 1 and Class 3 categorical exemptions, and such technical studies to determine traffic, noise, and other environmental impacts are not required. Again, this is a retail use in an existing tenant space that has been used for retail uses and other commercial activities. With no exterior alterations, only minor tenant improvements are proposed. Statement 4 in the appellant's appeal is that finding 3 cannot be made because it is not consistent with General Plan Policy 3.1. General Plan Policy 3.1 states, avoid the concentration of uses and facilities in any neighborhood or district where their intensities, operations, and/or traffic could adversely impact the character, safety, health, and quality of life. The Planning Commission found that all of the required conditional use permit findings can be made. You can refer to Attachment A for a full analysis of the findings. The project is a cannabis retail use which complies with all distance separation requirements to sensitive receptors that is listed in the municipal code. The location requirement in the city's ordinance are above and beyond the state's location requirements. Statement 5 in the appellant's appeal is that there is an inconsistency between the general plan and the current central district specific plan, in that the general plan has changed all of the zoning districts in the central district, but the central district specific plan has not been updated. The city's general plan was last updated in 2015. There are no inconsistencies in the current or proposed Central District specific plan that would preclude the proposed retail sales of cannabis. The project would establish a retail use in an area identified by the general plan for retail uses and specifically meets the location requirements established by the voters of Pasadena. Sweet Flower's proposed location at 827 East Colorado Boulevard is within Central District 5 zoning district. Retail sales are allowed and are proposed to continue to be allowed. The recommendation by staff, the application submitted by Sweet Flower is fully compliant with all of the land use regulations contained in section 17.50.066 of the municipal code. It is also consistent with the general plan and with the Central District specific plan. In addition to this conditional use permit, the applicant must also receive approval of a city-issued cannabis permit and a state license prior to operating. There are a number of additional regulations contained in Title V and Title VIII that are imposed as part of the cannabis permit, and the applicant must maintain a valid state license at all times. Based on the fact that the proposed location meets all applicable requirements of the zoning code, staff is recommending approval of conditional use permit number 6921, subject to the findings contained in Attachment A and conditions of approval in Attachment B. This concludes my report. We'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
Mayor, for the record, I just wanted to state that both the conditional use permit findings and the CEQA exemptions are the same ones that the appellants relied upon for their approvals.
Thank you. So next we'll hear from members of the council. Are there any questions before we proceed to the applicant's presentation? Mr. Kennedy's hand's up. Questions, Mr. Kennedy?
Mayor, I think for me, I would like to hear both sides before I make any comment.
Okay, so let's move on to the applicant.
Mr. Dodd will bring in first as the applicant. Tim? There you go. We can't hear you. Are you there? Can you hear us? Sorry, Mr. Dodd. For some reason, you're not being heard here in the chamber. We can't hear you.
Mr. Dodd, if you'll, can you hear us? We can't hear you. Are you able to unmute? Mr. Dodd,
I think maybe if you take it off your earphones and use your computer speakers, maybe? I don't know.
Is there a way we can call him, or I mean, he can call him if he hasn't changed his audio. Call in.
Todd, Tim, are you able to speak now?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
Now we can hear you. Go ahead. You are,
I'm so sorry about that.
that's okay.
Good evening, Mayor Gordo, Vice Mayor Wilson, council members and staff. It is my privilege to appear before you this evening to offer my brief comments. In the interest of time, I know that we have a very full agenda tonight. I've also provided to the city, but do not intend to present tonight, a redacted version of the original Planning Commission presentation I made on January 12th of this year, which was unanimously approved by the Planning Commission. I would be happy to address any questions you may have on our operation, our experience, our track record, or our location, should you wish. Turning to tonight's appeal of our validly issued CUP, as background, Sweet Flower was an original applicant in a process that started on January 1 of 2019, over 3 years ago. We were selected as one of the 6 winning applicants in the city of Pasadena on June 5, 2019. We were unanimously granted a conditional use permit by the Planning Commission on January 12, 2022, the only cannabis operator in the city of Pasadena to receive unanimous approval. In voting in favor of Sweet Flower's CUP, The chair of the planning commission, Mr. Olivas, who also represents our district, District 3, commented on our best-in-class diversity, inclusivity, and social equity initiatives. There is no dispute that both our location and our operation comply with Pasadena law. Sole contention of the appellants appears to be that the city, the staff, and the planning commission all erred in correctly determining that our CUP is exempt from environmental review under CEQA. For all of the reasons very well expressed in the staff report and in the staff presentation this evening, it is clear that the city's, staff, and the planning commission's determination regarding CEQA is correct and should stand. A vote against our CUP and in favor of this appeal would overturn a validly issued and unanimously approved CUP. It would have the effect of nullifying an ordinance of the city of Pasadena that was validly enacted by this council. It would invalidate the hard work of this council and EdTech in building a working cannabis program and to advance social equity in Pasadena, and would only support appellant's efforts, in my view, to further suppress competition, legal and local competition in Pasadena. Sweet Flower has worked extensively with the Pasadena Community Coalition, the only operator to do so, to provide jobs in the cannabis industry to Pasadena residents, to host now multiple job fairs in Pasadena for Pasadena residents, to provide representation at all of our stores for African-American-led Pasadena cannabis brands, to fund expungement clinics in Pasadena for those impacted by the war on drugs, and to provide mentoring and representation to cannabis entrepreneurs of color in Pasadena. Sweet Flower has done this while not yet being able to open. We seek only to get open as soon as possible and to do more in Pasadena. I urge you to reject this appeal, to affirm the city's determination regarding CEQA, and affirm the unanimous decision of the Planning Commission to issue Sweet Flower a valid CUP. And I urge you to do so urgently this evening so that we can continue our good work in the city of Pasadena. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Dodd. Next, we'll hear from, actually, other questions for Mr. Dodd before we, no, okay. Next, we'll hear from members of the public.
The appellant. So I believe Richard McDonald has joined the meeting. Mr. McDonald, are you there?
Yes. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can. Go ahead. You have 7 minutes. If not, you can ask for maybe a minute or two more.
No, I think 7 minutes should be fine. I want to hopefully everyone had a chance to read the letter and declaration that we submitted. The letter was submitted by myself and covers the CEQA guidelines, explains the CEQA structure, as well as the case law with regard to the use of exemptions. The declaration was submitted to provide direct evidence of the city's traffic flow charts to show the unstudied traffic impacts of these uses being in such close proximity. With that, let me start by saying the issue here is not whether you like Sweet Flower as an operator or not. The issue is not anything to do with Sweet Flower's social equity program, Sweet Flower's business operations, Tim Dodd, or anything else. In fact, frankly, the issue is not Sweet Flower getting a CUP or not. Contrary to what Mr. Dodd said, our appeal froze that decision, and this is a de novo hearing, so they don't have a validly issued CUP. This is not about the zoning amendment that you did either recently. This is about whether the city is required to undertake environmental review of the cumulative impacts from the overconcentration of similar uses at the same place, which in this case just happens to be the Lake at Colorado traffic intersection. And if you look at the declaration and exhibits attached from Harvest Council, you'll see there's 30 to 40,000 cars on the north-south axis. You'll see there's 10 to 20,000 cars on the east-west axis. So the question really isn't about, you know, are they going to be a good operator? Are they going to be good for the community? That all can be dealt with. The question is, in the first instance, do you first have to study the environmental impacts of the cumulative concentration of these particular type of uses? And we set forth in our papers how CEQA works in that. The three-tier structure, we put forward the law that shows that it's procedural. This is not something that deals with the substance of its operations or social equity program, as Mr. Dodd was saying. So the question really becomes, do these two exemptions apply? Because the city, initially, the city council said, we don't need to do any environmental review of the zoning code amendments because we'll do it when the applications come through. Now the applications are coming through and nobody's doing that environmental analysis either. If you take a look at Exhibit A to my letter, you'll see it was expressly represented that environmental review would be done, but now it's not. The reason is this: staff believes that the existing facilities exemption applies to the building as the facility. The case law that we put forward in front of you on pages 5 and 6 shows it applies to the use. It is the use that generates the traffic impacts, the noise impacts, not an empty building sitting there by itself. The other area of disagreement is we've set forth on page 7 the small structures exemption, and it refers to hotels, motels, offices, and staff believes that the offices can mean any commercial use, when in fact we've set forward the case law that says no, that's not the case. Those are the two big areas of interpretation where there are differences. We believe ours is correct based on the law that we've set forward in front of you, as well as the fact that section 15300 that we've cited specifically says you cannot use exemptions when there are cumulative impacts. Nobody in staff's presentation, nor did Mr. Dodd, tell you they studied anything, because they didn't. And that's what we're objecting to. Does it mean that they have to put his application on hold for a little bit while they go do that? Yeah, sure. But you do that all the time with a variety of uses. You do that with bars, restaurants, and other uses that have distance separation requirements. You do it with schools. You require traffic studies for schools. You do it with new projects. It's a very common practice. So it's not that big a deal to have it done. The fact of the matter is it wasn't done, and it should be done because they are 457 feet from another cannabis dealer. They are within the same district as another cannabis dealer. Actually, 2. Atrium has the right to come forward too, so there would be 3 in District 3, 450 some odd feet apart. So that's why we're saying now's the time to address the cumulative impacts. And the law supports us on that. And that's why we're asking you not to approve the CEQA determination until that's done. Thank you.
The clerk informs me there's no public comment, so we can move directly into rebuttal.
So, Mr. McDonald, you would be first up to rebut. I'm not sure if you have anything else to add or any closing statements, and then Mr. Dodd would be able to comment after you.
I would just leave with this question. Where is the traffic study? Where is the noise study? Where are the impact studies, cumulative studies? If they exist, then they'd be sitting in front of you tonight. They don't exist, and that's why they're not sitting in front of you. And that's why we're saying you cannot make that determination. You don't have any evidence, let alone substantial evidence. And as we point out in our letter, the burden's on the city, not me. Thank you.
Thank you, and we'll turn to Mr. Dodd. If you want to.
Thank you. A few points. Thank you. A few points. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think first off, the city has said as much in its filings in responding to the appellant's numerous lawsuits. I believe the city simply said that this is two large companies misusing CEQA to block competition, and that's really the meat of this matter. I'm sorry, but that I believe is, from my point of view, is a very well stated position from the city of Pasadena. Secondly, the city is relying on validly determined CEQA exemptions. Cannabis this use is retail. We're not a restaurant or a bar. It was retail before, it was retail now, and we are also a small business. This is 1,400 square feet, and we are, under the secret exemption, a store. We are a retail store. Those are my points. Everything else, I think the city has very validly, city attorney, city staff has very validly and correctly set forth their opinion on CEQA. I think it's very clear in the city presentation and the city report that this was a validly enacted and unanimously approved CUP. Again, I would remind Mr. McDonald that we are the only unanimously approved cannabis operator in the city, and we would simply like to go forward with our operation forthwith. So I thank you very much for this evening. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Mayor and council, that completes the public hearing process for testimony from the applicant and the appellant.
Let me just first turn to the staff for an opportunity to respond to some of the assertions made by Mr. McDonald. It seems to be Mr. McDonald's argument lacks the clear evidence of impact before we do what he'd like us to do. Do you want to address that issue?
I think that's correct, Mayor. The exemptions we've cited, the 01 and the 03 under 1500 of the state CEQA guidelines do provide for both the changes to this existing structure without any addition to square footage, as well as the change of use. The exception to the exemption with respect to cumulative impact, he is correct that you cannot use an exemption when there's evidence of a significant impact. There is no evidence of a significant environmental impact, and therefore the exemptions that we've cited do apply. And again, they are the same ones that were used for both Harvest and Essence.
So the absence of evidence of a significant impact would be if we were changing the use from one retail use to another, and I'm sorry, not from one retail use to another, but from retail to another use.
Or really in this case, I think a traffic study showing that the project exceeds the thresholds under VT or VMT from a cumulative perspective, and we've not seen that.
I see. Okay, Mr. Kennedy, followed by Ms. Williams. No, okay. Mr. Kennedy.
This issue has been debated significantly prior to tonight, and so I'll make every effort in light of our agenda, our full agenda, to keep my comments short. First, I would like to commend Mr. Tim Dodd for even having the discussion related to social equity and sharing with the council what his company plans to do in that vein. African Americans and Latinos never really had an opportunity to play because there was not a level playing field, because the prior city manager was not interested per se in really small operators of the cannabis business be given full opportunity. Recognizing that the former city manager is not here to defend himself, it is not necessary that I go down that road any further. Additionally, it is my contention and remains my contention that the voters of Pasadena have spoken, and that argument did not work when I said that there was up to one cannabis retailer per district. There were a majority of the council that felt that the recommendation that really came from the city manager and the director, David Reyes of development, was a way in which to get us moving in terms of cannabis retail operations. I still believe my objections are valid, and I'm hoping that there is a way in which to validate my objections, but I will not be pursuing any legal action, obviously. As it relates to cumulative impact, there is no doubt that the spacing of the cannabis operations in District 3 potentially have a cumulative impact. We're only talking about 2 retail operations now, but it was always contemplated by staff that you would shove 3 down the throat of District 3 as opposed to distributed them fairly throughout the whole city. Fundamentally, I find that flawed and unfair. Mr. Tim Dodd referenced Steve Olivas, an attorney who respected the chair of the Planning Commission and my representative or appointee to that body. I have the utmost respect for him, and I believe that we have such a relationship that if he feels strongly about an issue, he's free to vote his conscience, and that's what he did. So I applaud that effort. Back to the social equity, which is not really for consideration tonight, but since the appellant shared their view, I would simply like to say this. Thank you for the positive steps that you and whoever else you are working on to expunge the record of Latinos and African Americans who are unjustly convicted of crimes that are now not a crime, and in my view, had a color-based configuration to even bringing actions against those individuals. So you're doing the right thing. I just want you to know I have a fundamental objection in the manner in which not you supplied a solution, but how staff supplied a solution for the consideration of the council. So I do not believe at this point the CEQA requirements can be found, and therefore I will not be able to support the recommendation, or if I have this correct, the recommendation by staff. I wish you well, Mr. Dodd. You've conducted yourself as a gentleman and a responsible businessman. And if I do fail, I will welcome you to District 3 and hope that you would continue to move forward where the city of Pasadena has failed thus far as it relates to social equity. And I invite the environmental, the committee that my colleague, Mr. Hampton, chairs to fix that problem. And he has assured me that he will work on that to make sure that we see such diversity required in those who actually receive retail licenses to operate a cannabis business in the city of Pasadena. Those are my comments.
Thank you, Mr.
Don't expect any necessarily a response. They're for the record. In my objection and ongoing objection, I thank you, Mayor, for the opportunity to make my comments. And I thank all of those who have been involved, and particularly Mr. Dodd, for stepping up in a very positive way.
I'd like to motion to close public hearing, Mayor.
Motion to close the public hearing. Is there a second?
Second.
Been moved and seconded to close the public hearing. Roll call on the closing of the public hearing.
Yes.
Councilmember Hampton said yes. Councilmember Kennedy,
Yes.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
Yes.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
Yes.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
Public hearing is closed.
Okay.
I'd like to move staff's recommendation.
There's a motion to move staff's recommendation, and just for the record, Mr. Hampton, that includes the specific findings for the CUP that are found in attachment A and the conditions of approval for the CUP that are found in attachment B, correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, there's a motion to approve as recommended.
I had a question, Mayor, before we take a vote.
Vice Mayor Wilson?
I just want to confirm that the outcome of that motion would be consistent with the unanimous finding and recommendation of the Planning Commission. So this is a mirror motion.
That's correct, Vice Mayor Wilson.
Okay, thank you.
Is that a second, Mr. Wilson?
Yes.
Okay, motion and a second, roll call.
Councilmember Hampton,
Yes.
Councilmember Kennedy,
No.
Councilmember Madison,
Yes.
Councilmember Masuda,
No.
Councilmember Rivas,
Yes.
Councilmember Williams,
No.
Vice Mayor Wilson,
Yes.
Mayor Gordo.
Yes.
The motion passes 5 in favor, 3 against.
Next, we'll move on. Thank you to everyone. Next, we'll move on to item 16. This matter has been before us previously. This is the Lincoln Avenue specific plan and the general plan land use diagram amendments for the specific plan.
And this is item 16 and item 19 going to be discussed concurrently as there's a related ordinance to go along with item 16. And I will,
Mayor,
I was going to.
Yes.
open
are there any public comments?
No, there isn't, but I need to open the public hearing.
Okay, sorry.
That's okay. This is the time and place for the public hearing on general plan land use diagram amendment for Lincoln Avenue